Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about some CEREC inlay preparations and other considerations when deciding to do inlay versus composite. So let's get to it. My name is Scott Cairns, as most of you know who are going to be listening to this. My goal is to enhance the lives and livelihoods of all the general dentists who choose to work with me so that they may best serve their patients and themselves. This is the reason I coach dentists, so here we are. Moving on to the first slide of content here. So I want you to look at the x-ray if you can. There's a radiograph of the bite-wing x-ray that shows the distal of number 13. There is a small radiolucency on the distal of 13. It's blown up. It's a little grainy, but just in case you can't believe that is recurrent decay, here is a picture of the tooth after I've removed most of the composite. So not all the composites left there has been removed, but you can see the extent of the decay. So obviously this is a tooth that we need to replace. So the first question, always a good thing, is why did this fail? Why did this composite restoration? I don't know how old this restoration was done. I did not do it. This was a new patient. So why did it fail? Well, we don't know for sure, but let me show you what the tooth again looked like before we took out the decay in the old composite. Here you can see that the marginal adaptation and the contours of the restoration are poor. So the contact is very broad, and but the rest of the restoration is not necessarily bad, right? Those are pretty much the areas where it didn't work out so well, and those happen to be the areas where it failed, which is the finish line of the restoration to the composite. So moving on, what would have made this composite last longer? Well, if it failed because the finish lines weren't good, the obvious thing would be to consider just, if we had done a better job, if this had been placed in a way that was more cleansable, easier for the patient to take care of, would this have failed? Maybe, maybe not. It kind of depends on what the patient's hygiene is and a few other factors. But, it is what it is. And so right now we have to decide, what are we going to do about it, right? So treatment planning needs to happen before removing restorations and decay. Typically can't go to a patient and say, well, let me take out everything and see what we got left, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do to fix it. I think most of our patients want to know beforehand, before they make any kind of considerations, financial considerations, time considerations, decisions, basically, how are they going to go forward? What are they getting? So, we have to envision what it is we're going to end up with before we start. So, you have to be able to kind of see through the tooth. That's what x-rays are for. But just in general, you need to be able to see, when in your mind's eye, what is going to look like after I've removed all the bad stuff and all the existing stuff, and I'm down to just regular tooth structure. Now I can make a decision. So to help us in our decision-making process, there are a few different considerations between choosing between a direct and an indirect restoration. So there are structural concerns. Those are the gingival margin. Where is it going to be? The isthmus width, the occlusion, the patient's function or parafunction, and then finally the integrity of the cusps that we're working with that are going to be part of the final tooth. So when I used to be part of the Spear Faculty Club and was a student of Frank Spear, he came up with a whole bunch of different decision trees to help decide between when to do something. So in general, when we're dealing with decay on a tooth, we're going to be looking at some kind of restoration. So here we're going to just talk about this specific tooth and whether or not it's appropriate to do composite or if we should be doing an indirect. So again, those structural concerns are all addressed here, and it's basically just a check the box type thing. So are the gingival margins in the proximal box, are they going to be an enamel? If the answer is yes, then consider it direct. If the answer is no, then consider it an indirect. The isthmus, is it less than or greater than half the intercuspal width? So from an imaginary line or width between the two cusp tips, is half of that going to be gone after you remove the old restoration and any decay that's in there? In this situation, it's less than half, so that would be a green check. Occlusion is tooth supported. Yes, this tooth, the occlusion is going to be tooth supported, so that's another green check. And then are they in heavy function or parafunction? And the answer is no, so that's another green check mark for this patient. So this one could be a direct restoration. And also, not every direct restoration has to be done as a direct restoration. You can do something as an indirect if you choose. So this is a tough one, and this is why I chose this one, because this one could really go both ways. It's not one of the ones where the decay is down below the CEJ, so we're going to end up with a margin that's on dentin. So this is one, or that has any of those other issues. This one is one that checks all the green boxes, so you could do composite. In this situation, I did not do composite, so I want to be able to talk about, why composite was not the choice here for me. So again, moving on, we have our outline form. So this happens to be the restoration I chose was an indirect CEREC restoration. So with indirect, this is going to be my outline form. And you can see I've taken out the decay. It's a little deeper right in that one area than the rest of it. So there is some, it's not an ideal amount of reduction there. I did not go in and block out any undercuts with any resin or anything like that. I'm just going to make this work the way it is. I did widen the isthmus a little bit. I did that for convenience, but this is just so you can kind of see what the end outline form is going to be for this type of thing. So going back to why did I choose composite, or why did I choose a porcelain over composite? So what makes a composite last is going to be first size. Is it going to be pretty small? Next is the technique. Are you a bulk fill kind of a dentist? Or are you an incremental list where you put in layer by layer? What are your skills, or what are the skills of the person who's placing the actual material into the tooth? What is the material? What kind of composite are you using? And then obviously what is the patient's home care? So all of those things go into making a decision. It's not just as easy as all composites are the same. They're not. All dentistry is done by a person. So that person's skill and their ability to prep well and all that kind of stuff is going to play into the consideration here. All right, so moving on, what makes an inlay or onlay last, right? So is it different? I would say the design of the inlay or onlay is a critical component to that. Are we designing enough reduction for the material that we're going to be choosing? Now, most inlays are going to be pretty small in size, so we end up with not having to worry so much about force and all that kind of stuff. How does it fit? Was it designed in a way that there's a good fit, marginal adaptation to it? What are the skills of the person who's making the design, and what are the skills of the person who's cementing it and as well as prepping it? And then material, less of a consideration for an inlay than an onlay. Onlay, you definitely want to have stronger material because now you're going to be replacing cusps. And then what is the home care? That's the same for whatever we put in the mouth, whether that be indirect or direct. And then after all structural factors are considered, what other considerations exist? So here we are. There are some that are going to be patient focused, which are What is the cost to the patient? How much time is the patient going to be in the chair? And then some of them are dentist focused, which or some of them are just you know yourself better than anyone else. What are your preferences and what are you good at? What's your skill level? Um, there are the delegable components, meaning what can you delegate to, like in Colorado, where we can use EDAs, expanded duties dental assistants, or expanded function dental assistants. They might be placing composite, or they might be doing your design for you on your CEREC, and they might be cementing your restoration. It just kind of depends on state laws. So, and then the economics of dentistry is also a concern. So I'm going to touch on that really quick because that's important, right? So all dentists need to be paid for the work that they do. And so in dentistry, the metric for payment for your work is that you are always trading money for time. And there are only two kind of columns to think about when you're trading your money for time. Is, you're going to be able to charge a higher fee, or you're going to have to do more dentistry to make whatever it is amount of money that you think is a fair reimbursement for yourself. So when you are talking about fees, there are two things, right? One is your negotiated fee schedule with your insurance company. So if you are in network, that goes away, right? So composite, like everybody who's in network for Delta gets paid the same amount to do a composite as everyone else. That's not true if you're out of network. If you're out of network, you can charge whatever you think is fair. And then the other option, though, is when you are in network, is to do a higher fee procedure. So, if Delta doesn't pay for or doesn't pay for a direct ceramic restoration, they only will pay for a composite. Then the patient's responsible to pay for the out of network fee schedule. So that's a way to actually increase what you're being compensated. All right, so next is you can do more dentistry. So you can work faster, you can work longer. So working faster usually doesn't work well when you're talking about doing what's in the best interest of the patients. Everybody has a maximum speed, so it is what it is. You can work longer, right? So let's say you want to make a certain amount of money. You can work 4-hour day, you can work 6-hour day, 8-hour day, 12-hour day, whatever it is you want. But the longer you work, the fatigue does set in, and your dentistry isn't going to be as good. You can leverage auxiliaries. So if anybody's watching a lot of videos of ultra conservative composite restorations, those are going to be fee-for-service dentists who are doing every step themselves because they can charge whatever they want in order to make sure that they're getting compensated for it. So in a in-network type of environment, auxiliaries are going to become important because we have to be able to provide a certain amount of services for the fees, whatever fees we are choosing to do. And then improve efficiency. So, getting more efficient with the time that you do have, which basically kind of circles back to working faster. All right. And then, so if we look at our restoration here, so when, I ended up doing a ceramic restoration because in my hands and in my environment, meaning where I actually work on a fee schedule, I don't get to charge the amount of fee that would be necessary for me to do every step of this from start to finish in a repeatable, predictable way. So it is easier for me to have a restoration where I know the contours are going to be as good as can be done, and those can be designed easily outside of the mouth on the CEREC machine, as opposed to having to do all of that intraoral with small burrs and discs as a way of of getting an ideal tooth form after we're all finished. So I did an inlay. Now, if you look at my inlay, you're going to see that it's wider than the previous restoration was. And, you know, if I was using a lab for my indirect restorations, I probably could have got that even smaller with a pressed ceramic as opposed to a milled ceramic. But with a CEREC machine and a milled ceramic, I went to kind of on the outside of the 50% isthmus size. It's probably right there, if not maybe a little higher than that. But I do feel that it makes up for it with the good contour and emergence profile that we have from this restoration in approximately. So that's the end of the presentation here. So there's lots of considerations. This took me 16 minutes to explain. In the mouth, this takes me, 16 seconds to figure out. So it's should be something that you can really do. And I encourage you to become really crystal clear with your own belief structure around composite and ceramic, so that when you are faced with these choices, you can make a quick and decisive choice, and your patient will be able to make a choice of whether or not they are going to hire you to do that dentistry. All right. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks for tuning in. Thank you.